Are we live? We're live. Yes,
We are live,
we are.
finally, again.
Again.
So, after many tests, um, we have figured out how to get this author interview started. So, I'm Selena Teams, founder of Successful You. I am a Hello Seven coach, and I use my coaching expertise in the self publishing space. And for the last 6 weeks or so, I have been working with Oluchi Ndubuisi, my client, in the 10X Niche Network coaching program. And so she has completed the program, and we're here not so much to talk about the program this time. I'll upload a recording about our conversation about the program later. Right now, we're going to dive into her business. She is publishing a book, and I'm excited about her book, and I'm excited to introduce you to her. So, Oluchi, I'm going to hand it over to you to share whatever opening comments you would like. And when you're ready, I'll start the author interview.
Okay, sure. My name is Oluchi Olivia Ndubuisi, and I am the writer of this poetry collection, Tasteful Hypocrisy. I am also the founder of the Kavi Cauldron, where a platform where I publish my writing. I have essays, travelogues, poetry, and it's slowly evolving into a media company because right now I also have a YouTube channel, which is where you're watching this interview alongside Selena. But I decided to hire and have a partnership with Selena because after I wrote this book, I just said, now what? Now, how am I going to start the publishing, self-publishing? And as I already shared in the previous video, there was information out there on YouTube, but it all it did for me was it helped me do just a little bit, and then I started firing off in all directions with no steady structure. And that was where I said, I can't do this on my own. I need a publishing coach. And through Hello Seven, I found Selena, and it's been a wonderful partnership since then. And with her coaching, I've been able to structure the rollout of this book. I've been able to structure the marketing and the way that I talk about this book. So, yes, please, she has been a wonderful resource, and make sure you go to her channel, give her some love, hire her, work with her. She's awesome. And this 10X publishing program is something that will always stay with me as I go along my self publishing journey.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for those plugs. So I'm happy that you had a great experience in the 6 week coaching program. And I think the absolute best is yet to come. So I'm going to dive into our interview questions right now with you. You ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Oluchi, can you share what inspired you to write this poetry collection?
Um, I I've been thinking about this. Nothing. I am a writer. That is what I do. I just write. But I will say that what inspired me to put together the collection, because I don't write every day, but I write most times. The notes app on my iPhone hates to see me because I'm always opening a new note and getting that storage, that storage thing about increasing your storage because there's always something to write about. So I think writing is just my creative outlet. So I wouldn't really say that something inspired me to write it. I would say there were things that inspired me in the process of writing it, like something that I saw while I was writing it, and I wrote it. And then when the collection started to take shape was when I saw um, there were some poetry um, contests that I saw that they promised that they'll, if you win the contest, you get a prize of a certain amount of money, but they'll also help you publish. So that was, I knew I was going to publish, but I did not quite know that I wanted to self publish. So I thought, okay, looking at my budget and everything, let me see if I can go through these other people and publish my book. Well, I didn't. I made it to the semi-finals, but I didn't make it to the finals of the competition. So I was pretty bummed. But that was after that. That was when I decided that I should self-publish. But again, putting this in a collection, I think when I was able to parcel all the poems out, and I saw that, oh my God, this it's like more than 50 poems already. It's enough to have a collection. And one thing I like about this collection is that it's not just a book. It took me a while to name it because I didn't really know what to name it, because there's different poems in the book. It's not just one, it's not just um, a collection of poems dealing with travel, or a collection of poems dealing with grief or something. There were just different things in there. So I didn't know what to name it at first. But having the collection take shape was what inspired me to publish it.
Okay. And can you share the title? Because I don't think I know I didn't mention it. So share with our audience what your
Yes,
title is.
yes. Oh, the title is called Tasteful Hypocrisy. That is the title. Yes. And I chose the title because it stands out, but not just that, there is elements of um, uh, there is food being discussed in there, but not just food. There's also different things, different themes in the book that contradict each other, but it's also part of the human experience. There are things that we go through, things that we like or don't like, that contradict the very things that we stand for. So that was how I was able to come into naming it Tasteful Hypocrisy.
Yeah, when I heard the title, something in me went, "Ooh, what's that?" You know, and that's how you know that you have a great title, where it just instinctively causes the person who encounters it to be like, "What's that?"
What's
There's
that?
a curiosity. There is like, I'd like to know what that's about. So I was very impressed with the title that you selected for your book. It kind of hooked me in like instantly.
Oh, thank
So
you. Thank you so
yeah, great choice. So I'd like to know, were there specific themes or experiences that shaped you during your creative process? And I realized there's a variety of poems and scenarios in which you were writing, but if you can identify any specific themes that
much.
came up for you.
Sure, yes. So when I was writing a lot of the poems, it was a time when I was doing a lot of reflection. And it was also a time when I had applied for, I had, I came to this country as an international student. And then I worked my way into getting my papers and everything. But at that particular moment in my life, I had a work visa that was solely tied to the place I work at. So, in a way, if anything happened, I did not have the freedom to leave. So, I wrote, and also any lawyer, what the assault will tell you around that time. And I also applied for my permanent residence around that time. So there were a lot of things going on. And any lawyer, what his salt will tell you, don't leave the country around this time. So I was writing that collection around the time where I couldn't leave the country. I couldn't go home back to Nigeria. I was just here. I was just here in the US. I couldn't leave the country. So there was a lot of, if you go through the book, I starting from place setting of for one, there was a place in that book that had a lot of cold imagery. And that was just reflecting my life at that time, going through, and also it was the winter, and a lot of the times, a lot of the ways that it came to me and affected me was through food. And I will talk about place setting for one, where now anywhere Nigerians go, we find other Nigerians. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, poor me, I was just lonely, there wasn't anybody. No, I had a community of people, but there's just something where that communal Christmas morning where we we start preparing for Christmas, starting just weeks before Christmas. We buy a lot of turkeys. We give out turkeys to people back home. And then that Christmas morning, we kill the turkey, we make food, even though some people will hide away and come out when the food is ready. But it was still like a communal preparation of food, you know? And I started thinking that, maybe terror really does impact how the food comes out, where the animal was raised, or where, yeah, because my turkey can never taste the same way the turkey from home tasted. No matter what I tried, the turkey can never taste that way, can never taste that way. So it was just missing that familial touch of that food. And it was also like there was a place where I talked about schnapps, and schnapps is a drink that my dad always gets during the Christmas, and he always pours us the drink, and he pours it into one cup, but no one really likes it. So we'll all end up drinking from that one cup because we'll all taste it and we'll end up not liking it. So it was just missing that whole communal food. And we can sit here and say, oh, terroir doesn't impact taste, but turkey, I don't know, turkey from Arizona that had to fight off some exotic snake will taste different from a turkey that had to survive the Hamatan wind in Nigeria. Like there's really something different about that taste. And I think it's a combination of terroir and a combination of just the way it's prepared and just everybody making it that way. So that is one poem that I think highlighted my experience, especially where I live. It's winter during the Christmas season, and everything dies and everything is just, doesn't look as appetizing. And Christmas back home is always very lively because we go back to the village. Here it's cold, you can hear a pin drop. It's cold and it's quiet. Can you hear? Yeah, the roads, students have come back home, the roads are not, no Christmas congestion, whereas back home it's a whole different thing. So that definitely highlighted my experience around that time, just that experience of missing home, having people around, but still missing that. I'm the first of 7 kids, so still missing that big family that will annoy you to the ends of the end. But you now that you finally have your freedom, you're like, where are you guys? Yes, so that definitely um, impacted me. That is one of the experiences that impacted this collection. I will also say that a lot of the poems I have in this collection are not just my experience. A lot of them is observation. For example, let me see, overconsumer. That was really sparked when I was I went to New York City. I was on the subway and I was eavesdropping on this conversation this girl was having with another girl. They were loud, and she was discussing how small their apartment was, but they weren't really saying small. They were discussing it in square feet. Discussing it in square feet. But after hearing that, I walked out of there and I left the subway, left the building of the subway. And then what do I see? When I when I come out of the subway and I'm just walking through the street, I see this very small door, like very small apartment. And this guy comes out of it so dressed to the nines, like he was decked out in clothing, and that was where overconsumer came from. And around that time was also when I was beginning to grapple with, when you start making a little bit more money than you made in college, everything looks shiny, you just want to grab, 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 grab. So that was when I started grappling with, oh my god, imagine living in this tiny place and everything that's filled in there are just things that you've collected and collected and collected, and you can't even have room to sleep because you filled this place with all these things and you spent your money on all these things. So yeah, I think this book is also about relationships in that way, our relationships to people, relationships to things, relationship to work. It's a lot of it has to do with, if you ask me about an overarching theme on this book, I'll say relationships.
Relationships. Okay.
Yes, I
Well,
am.
that is a lot of insight, and I like it connects some dots for me in reading the poem. So thank you for giving us some more context around it.
You're welcome. Yes.
So, and I think maybe we've touched this a little bit, but um, so the question is, poetry often reflects personal journeys and emotions. How do you see your own experiences woven into the poems of Tasteful Hypocrisy? And but I believe you kind of
I've
did
touched.
that with the subway experience and the
Yeah.
turkey, the type of terror
Yeah.
what a turkey would experience. So, is there something you'd like to add to that, or if I could go on to the next one?
Oh, the only thing I like to add is I will say it and I'll always say it again. Um, Tasteful Hypocrisy, some of the stories, some of the poems in there are personal experience. A lot of them are not, because there's this thing where people like to think that if it's something like poetry, people like to categorize. I understand that poetry is categorized under nonfiction, but people take it a little too far where they think everything you write here is your life. If
Mhm.
I milk my life for content, I will have no life. So everything in there is not, all of them is not my life. Some of them is observation, and also letting my imagination do the rest. Like the guy I saw when I came out from the subway station, his apartment might not be like that. It might not be filled with clothes and all those things. But through what I was going through at that time in my own life, and then now imagining what his own life might be like, that was how I came up with that poem, Over Consumer. So I would just like to put that out there just to make sure that people know that some of it is not my life, some of it is observation, observing the people around me, especially the women around me, the women I grew up around, and then letting my imagination do the rest.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Well, what do you hope readers will take away from reading your poetry? Are there particular messages or feelings you aim to evoke through your writing?
um sure. So if a reader reads this book and the only thing they take away from it is, let's say for example, that poem Lush, where I talk about paint me the flowers and this and that of different things, the only thing they took away from it was just, oh, flowers of different places in the world, that's fine with me. You can take that away. Not everybody, some people read poems just to relax, not everybody is reading to find some deep insight or whatever. So I want to put that out there, that that is completely fine with me. But I do hope that with the poems in this book, people take away, um, not even not even just examining the relationships we have, but also thinking about how the things we do impact the generations before us, after us. Um, a lot of the way I tell stories is, it was shaped from an early age by my mother, because she will sit us down, we'll all sit down on the floor, and she'll sit on a high chair and she'll tell us stories about things. A lot of those stories are centered around, at the end, finding a husband and getting married. But a lot of those stories are also the way, people here have bedtime stories. There are kids in Nigeria that do have bedtime stories, so I'm not gonna negate that. But in my case, I did not have bedtime stories, but we had stories where she would just sit us down and talk to us about things going on in life. And some of them were also, fables and myths and all those old stories that were passed down about superstitions and all those things. So a lot of that, it's so funny how my a lot of the ways I tell stories are shaped by her. But I started thinking about it on a subconscious level. Some of the stories that she told while we were younger, a lot of those things are things. A lot of the lessons I learned then are things I try to undo now that I'm a grown up in my life. Then some of those lessons are still things that serve me now that I'm a grown up. So it's not one thing, it's not all black and white. It's a lot of gray in there. But I also want us to examine how the storytelling affects the subconscious. Because I'll never forget one time I was talking to um, a man I used to work with way back, and he said he likes to joke a lot, and he said something. I can't remember exactly what we were discussing, but he said, "Well, Liv, you know how it is. It's mother's baby, father's maybe." But then I started thinking all those little slogans. I mean, when you think about branding, they tell you to have a slogan that's small and people can remember. But all those things, I started to think about how sayings like that impact the subconscious, and it absolves men of raising, parenting in the way we make it a mother's job. And in the poem, there's a poem in that book called Rant, like a son's rant, where this son was ranting to his therapist. I touched a little bit on that, where there was a line in there where the father was blaming the mother for the child doing something, and he said, "Well, your son." And I just thought, oh my God, this is how it happens. Like, it's the same thing here in America. Like, a Nigerian American does something wonderful. It's like, oh, this American citizen did this. And then the moment they do something that's not as palatable, well, he is a Nigerian and he lives in America. And I just thought many fathers do this. Like, the moment he does something wonderful, our son. And then the moment that kid does something that's not great, well, your son, it becomes the mother's problem. And this book, like with the stories that my mother told me and told us as kids, like, that parenting, that mothering is very important to a kid and a kid's subconscious. Like, those stories, they really do matter. Like, even things I scoffed at, you start to see those things come out later in life and impact some decisions that you're making. And then I started asking myself, like, then you start to blame her. And then you say, wait, why am I just blaming her? It's not just her. Even though mothering, like mothers, it's a wonderful, challenging job. But fathers should also be part of that parenting. So that is one of the things I touch on this book, that storytelling, that how it impacts your subconscious, and how sometimes you don't even think about it, but the decisions you make come from all those things that were put into you, not just in your formative years, even now that you are a grown adult. So that is one of the things this collection touches
Okay, right. I agree. So much of our responses are related to conditioning, and we just in a pat sequence. This is how we respond. This happened. This is the response,
on.
and it does take an effort to go back and examine that. Okay, well, why is that? Because that mother's baby, father's maybe, that is absolutely something I heard growing up, and until you mentioned it, I didn't think about how it may be affecting my outlook on, well, how reliable is this father?
Yeah,
Maybe it sets the person up to expect less, a
yeah,
woman, to expect less from a father, because after all, it's his maybe, and it's your baby. So I didn't think about that. So that's pretty.
yeah, it is. And to touch on that, that is how a lot of things are handed down when we were, at least I'll speak of growing up when I was little. Like sometimes you say something and your parents will respond with a metaphor or an idiom or whatever. And then now you start quoting that thing. so,
Yeah.
so that
And you
definitely
say,
shaped a lot of my writing process. But it also, on the flip side, it made me examine some of these sayings that we grew up on, and it's just some of them do more harm than help, really.
yeah, I like that that you acknowledge both. Some of those things need to be undone, but then some of those things do serve your life.
Yeah.
And we kind of swing to one end of the pendulum of blame,
Mhm.
but we, like them, we are doing the best that we can in the
Yeah.
parenting space,
Okay.
in the human being, in the being of a human. We're doing the best that we can, and all we have are our past learnings and our present experiences, and with that we make our predictions.
Yes.
So, and that may not resonate with the younger people that we are sharing this information with, but this is the best wisdom that we have
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
give to them. So, okay, so that your readers can expect that in the
Mhm.
book as well. Okay, so we're going to go into a little technical question.
Okay.
Could you describe your writing process? Do you have any rituals or habits that keep you in a creative mindset when you're writing poetry?
When I'm writing poetry, I don't have a structured writing process. It's still something that I'm working on. I know that I like to have something sweet around. So there's this ice cream bar. Well, it's not ice cream. It's a yogurt bar from one of those. It's from a Korean grocery store. I like to have it on Saturday mornings when I edit my work, and I really tried. Like I really tried to have a structured writing. There was a week where every time I wake up, I'll wear a kimono and sit on the table and try to write. That did not that did
My
not work.
goodness.
I wear a kimono. And then the next week I tried, okay, I'm gonna wear a kimono and do my makeup. By the time I did all those things, the time has already gone. But so I don't have, I wish I did, but I don't have. But I will say that I do my best. And this is also the way I naturally am. And even now, more than ever, I try to highlight it. I do my best to put myself into experiences that keep me in that state of creativity. So every Saturday, I go out and I go to local art galleries in town. um I go whenever they have a new show. So if I get emails from them. So if they have a new show, then I go and I just hit them all on Saturday. And then if they have a new show next after their show, this quarter runs out, then I go to the new show again. So that I do. And sometimes if I see a painting that I like, I take a picture of it. And when I want to, I do these exercises where I try to write a poem based on that painting. Whatever it is that painting, I feel like that painting is telling me, I try to write a poem from it. So that's one thing I do. Another thing I do is I watch a lot of old interviews of writers and poets, and I also listen to a lot of poetry, but it's just turn off all the lights, put it on speaker. Like, try, if you think I'm joking, if you turn off all your lights, put that "Oh Captain, My Captain" on speaker. There's a man called Red Frost on YouTube that reads poems.
Ooh,
I like to do that.
let me write that down. His name is Red.
Red Frost. But if you type in "Oh Captain, My Captain," he's one of the first videos that comes up. But that poem, it's it's one of the poems that I like to go back to. And also I like to read. A lot of ideas also come to me when I'm reading. I like not necessarily fiction, but more plays. I like plays. I like great monologues. Like, I'm that person that will watch a movie because of a monologue I saw in it. I like wonderful monologues. So, and I love reading plays, watching plays. If I like the music, if it's a musical and I like, even though I'm not the biggest musical fan, I do like some musical scores. I will add it to my playlist. So there's that, and there is songs. Like, I try to listen to music in different genres, like from different places. That too also impacts my writing. So I don't have a I don't have a structured process, but I try to surround myself with things that keep me in that creative state. Whether it's Another thing is movies.
Oh, okay.
Movies, yeah, movies, TV shows that I watch, and I don't just watch just to laugh. Or sometimes even after I watch it, then I go back to thinking, why did this inspire this kind of reaction in me? So I watch it with that kind of lens. For example, that movie Gladiators 1, I can't tell you how many times I've rewatched that movie, not because of the whole movie, but just because of how Russell Crowe's character described his home to the emperor when the emperor asked him about where he lived, just because of the way he described that. I've rewatched that movie many times. Or we can also talk about Mark Antony's speech where he came to bury Caesar, but for like the Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar. And then the whole speech, people really thought he was coming to bury Caesar. But you could slowly see how he turned the crowd against Brutus and everybody. Like, he started with friends, Romans, countrymen, and then he goes and goes and goes. And then slowly he starts to turn the crowd against Brutus. But at the end of that speech, there was a ruckus. People were out for Brutus and his men. And people that were following them, but at the end, they were out for Brutus and his men. So things like that really do get me in a state of, oh, even after I've written something, like, what do I want this to look like? How do I want the turning point in this poem to look like? And I go from there.
This is fascinating. Fascinating. As a person who has personally, I I'm not I'm not in depth in poetry. It's not my particular preference for reading, but I love beautiful poems. And so to get some insight as to what inspires you and how you um, put yourself in situations to feed your creative thinking and mindset, I think that's it's important for any writer, any author to feed that because there's enough of life, real life stuff that will crowd out your ability to tap into that. And so I think maybe that is the cure, well, maybe a cure for writer's block. Go and immerse yourself in something that takes you into a place of wonder, a
Yeah.
place of curiosity, um, so, and of course, you will always, when you're in that space, you can see the mechanics behind it, like you
Mhm.
described, the strategy of that speech. Like
Mhm.
there was the lyrical part of it, the literary, the
Mhm.
conversation, but the motivation and the strategic use of those words had the desired effect. And I didn't know that that in a poem you would be having a turning point. I just thought it just flows out of you, and what it is what it is. But you're saying not necessarily so if you
No,
want to
it's
hone
not.
in on a point.
No, it's not necessarily. So I used to think that way too. And then I think I got to a point where when I started writing more and more, because it used to be before I wrote the collection, it used to be, oh, I think of a great poem and then I write it down. And then sometimes I will write out. So, for example, let me give you an example. There's a poem in this book called Is It Laziness? And in that poem, I can't remember who exactly I was having a conversation with, but we were talking about something, and I was looking for shortcuts to do that thing. And then every shortcut I find, there's always something attached to that short, like something extra you had to do for that shortcut. Like it was just, is there really no easy way to do this thing? And then after that talk with that person, I wrote down the idea for that poem. But that poem didn't really materialize until one time at work, we were having a conversation and somebody was talking about BBLs and how, yeah, and how, because I thought you just do the surgery, recover, and it's over. But no, they're talking about all the lifestyle changes you have to make, the exercise regimen, how you have to rest so your kidneys can recover. I did not know these things. I thought you just go in, they cut you up, and oh, the kicker was they talked about this, and then he said that the lady he talked to about this said she had to book 2 airplane seats when she was flying back from the country she went to do it. And I was just sitting there thinking, there is no way she flew Spirit Airlines. I was sitting down there thinking, like, there is no way she flew Spirit Airlines. But after I came back and I thought about that, that was when that poem, Is It Laziness, came. And because that poem just, I know I used, when I thought about the idea, I used plants. But then after that experience, I came back and I wrote it. I used flowers, but it was something about, somebody not wanting natural flowers. And then they got plastic ones, and then they found out that they also have to dust them and clean them. And it's just nothing, just that idea of no matter what shortcut you think you're taking, there's always something attached to it. There's always some weird hidden thing attached to it that you don't even think of. And then you might end up paying more for that in the long run than if you just stuck with the original long plan. So yes, that was part of it. Sometimes it comes quickly, like the poem just comes. And then other times I write down the general idea and I just go do other things. It could be a month even. And then something will happen. I'll be like, my God, this is that poem. And then I'll go back and write it. So it doesn't just come. So sometimes it does, but not always.
Well, this
Yeah.
is not on the list, but my question is, did because you write and then you sometimes come back and you find an enhancement for what you've written thus far, was it challenging for you to wrap up this book to say this is it and I'm not going to keep improving these poems or adding to
Yes.
it? How
Yes.
challenging was that?
It was challenging because after I wrote, there were two poems on here actually didn't that weren't in the first and second edits. I added them finally, and I asked him to do a developmental edit along with the proofreading at the end, and that was it. I said, you know what, anything else will have to come in the next book, because there was always that thing of, okay, let me add more, let me add more, let me add this, and it's gonna keep getting delayed and getting delayed and getting delayed. So yeah, there are poems on there that I added, and I took it out because I realized that I wanted to add more things to it. And I really, now that I've gone through this whole process, I am very I'm very grateful for it, but I've also learned a lot of things. And one of those things was how important it is to self edit as a writer, because I learned a lot from the editors, that like the questions they asked me. I think I told you this before. There was a poem there about fibroids that I described it as a rigid ball, and he asked me if it was a rigid ball, why was it still growing? And that was a legitimate question, and I didn't have an answer for it. So also interrogating my work in that way, like, does this even make sense? Like, this thing that I'm saying right now, if someone pictured it, also my poems have a lot of imagery. If someone pictured this in their head, will it be outrageous? Would it be like having to ask myself? Before, I didn't do that, but after sending it for editing and interacting with the editors, now I approach my work in a whole different way. Yes, I write it. Yes, I marinate. I come back, I change it. But before I decide that it needs to go to editing, I've realized that I too need to sit down with it and do my own edits. And I did not do that the first, like, with Tasteful Hypocrisy. I did not do that first edits. I sent it off to the first to the editor, and then I had to do a second round of edits on
I imagine if that contest came around again,
it.
after having had your experience with learning how to interrogate your work, learning how to look at it from the perspective of the reader, um, I believe that you would have a very different experience with
Yes.
that. But I think that happened for a reason,
It-
because it led you to the self-publishing journey wherein you collected all of this information and wisdom in the context of publishing on how to produce a book that not only expresses what you want to put out into the world, but also how this will land with the reader and who that reader could be. And I just think that that's priceless. And the fact that you had to not cut yourself, that you had to set a boundary line for this is the extent of this collection of poems. I believe there's another book uh,
yes, there's
in your
definitely
in your
there's
future.
definitely another book. Oh, and another thing that helped me do that was that my cover design was already done. Cover design was already done. I already told her 100 pages. So she already did the spine and everything. So that also helped me know, okay, this is where we are cut now.
That's good. That's a good observation. Once you've decided the page count, that kind of reels you in. I like
Yeah.
that. I hadn't heard that before. Okay, so I believe
Hmm.
so. The last question I have for you is: are there any poets or writers who have influenced your style or approach to poetry? How have they impacted your work?
Hmm. Oh, there's a lot. I'll say, first of all, the way I tell stories was greatly impacted by my mother. And just different books I've read over time. I remember when I was writing this collection, one of the books I read, there was um, a collection called 100 Poets, 100 Poems. And it was like an anthology of Japanese haiku. So a lot of, well, translated, but a lot of those poems really, especially when I was thinking of the kind of poems I wanted to write when it comes to the imagery, those poems really impacted my work. And then there's a lot of Chinese poets. I know I like a lot of Du Fu and a lot of Li Bai, and I also like Li Qingjiao's work. So I read a lot of their work, and also it was heavy with imagery around that time. And then another book I read was Changes by this Ghanaian writer. She's passed now, but her name is Ama Ata Aido. She it wasn't really she's a poet. She has poetry collections, but that book Changes. I just loved the way it was written, like the language, the metaphors, the imagery. Even though it was a fiction book, it impacted the way I write poetry. And my travel poems, I try to think of there's that TV director, he's also passed, David Lynch, where he described how horrible his experience in Philadelphia was, like how the industrialization and everything. He lived there when he went to film school, but that experience inspired him to make that movie Ezerhead. But I think of that when I write travel poems, like that Sunrise in Sausalito, or um, the one about a plane landing. So I think about things like that when I write poems that focus on a particular place. Who else? Oh, there's a Nigerian poet, but I like his plays better than his poetry. His name is Wole Soyinka. His poems, his plays greatly like impacted my work. And then finally, I also think people sleep on Native American poets or poets from the native nations. But there's this man called N. Scott Momaday, also late, but there's this poem he wrote called The Delight Song of Said Soleil. That poem, it's a lot of I ams, like I am the fish that shines in the water. I am like a lot of I ams, but against nature. Like it was basically just putting yourself in nature, but saying that you are the eagle that flies across the night sky, flies across the blue sky. But things like that. That poem, yes, it impacted my work, but what it did for me was one time I was going through just something emotionally taxing with work and just life in general. I read that poem every day. Yes, I did. And then at the end of it, it ends with I am I stand in good relation to the earth. I stand in good relation to the daughter of Sicily. Don't you see? I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive. That is how it ends. But that at that period in my life, that poem, I I read it every day. And it's free on the American Poets Poetry Society website. So I'll just pull it up. I read it every day while I was going through that period in my life. And yeah, he is definitely one of the poets that influenced my work. But try, I love imagery. I love poems that bridge that gap between high poetic language and normal language that people can understand. So I write what I love to read from others, and those are basically the poems that impact my work. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I have I have one ask and
Okay.
one more kind of interview question for you to respond to.
Oh,
The ask is, would you put together a one sheeter, if you will,
okay.
of the influences that you
Okay.
talked about?
Okay.
Because a person who may want to venture into poetry and doesn't know much about it might be able to connect with what influenced you.
Okay.
And I, for one, am curious about those poets. I have not heard of one of them. And so so it's a little bit of a, for me and for the audience,
Okay.
this could be one of the things that you share with the people you are engaging with, that you want them to tap into your poetry, to share with them what your influences are. And so it could be as simple as the my influences for culture, for travel writing, for imagery, or whatever. However, you
Okay.
know those answers and list those sources, so
Okay.
that other people might, it may be a way for them to get to know you a little better by understanding what influences you. And they may have a deeper appreciation for the poems in your book. So the next thing I want you to talk about is, let's talk about when you are publishing the book, what your immediate goals are for um, building up audience engagement around the book, if you're going to be in a city or in a place near, um, if you're planning to travel and tour anywhere, so that people who may watch this live stream would know, oh my goodness, she's going to be 2 hours away from me, or she's in a city that I'm in and I'd like to connect with her. So let's just share how people can connect with your book, where they can get it, when they would be able to get it, those types of logistics.
Sure. Yes. So I'm going to go paperback first. So it will be available starting April 15th for pre-orders. And after that, I'll have I haven't determined the date yet, but I will be releasing the ebook version. But I haven't determined the date. I will update on my YouTube, on my website when that comes around. And then, of course, I'm going to keep interacting with people on social media. You can send me an email from, I have my email on my website. It is thecoveycauldron@gmail.com. And you can always send me an email, let me know your thoughts, and I will reply. Also, you can leave a review when you purchase it on Amazon. And I am working on getting the book into bookstores. I know my local bookstore, I already talked to them, not bookstore, my local library, I already talked to them, and they want a copy to see how it does. And then they will stock it up if more people want to read it. So I am still in contact with libraries all over the country. It is a slow process because I'm a one-woman team for right now, but it is a slow process, but I am working on it. And whichever libraries I get to be on board, I will always update on my socials, on my website, and I will always let the audience know. And I will always be interacting. I am available on TikTok, on X, and also I have Facebook, but I don't use it that much. But I have a brand account on Facebook, so you can always message me there, and it should come through my emails, and I will always reply when you do.
Okay, so what we'll do is you can share all of your handles that you want, where you want people to connect with you at, and I will post that in the comments
Oh,
on this video, or, once we're all done, so
oh,
that people can connect with you.
okay.
So is there anything you would like to um, say to the audience before we wrap up?
I'll say write my book. It is my very first book, and I need all the encouragement I can get. Um, and I hope you love it. Please, please, please. I really want to get that window seat into how people interact with my work. Please, whether you like it, whether you don't like it, whether you have a problem with something, even if you don't send me an email, please leave a review so that I can know how people interact with my work and so that I can do better in the next book. So never hesitate to share how you feel. And of course, keep it respectful.
Yes, we're all about the respect.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you so much. We gave an hour to giving this amazing author the opportunity to share with you the insights as to how she came to the self publishing journey, what her inspiration and her influences are, and that she is, this is the first of many that are going to come through. And so I'm delighted to be your coach for your first self published book. And I expect that we will be able to continue to work together because books that do very well get an offer from the traditional side of publishing. And of course, that just blows up your exposure. And there are things that you can do to make yourself attractive to that group. And I'm all about helping authors scale. So I'm excited about what we've done. I'm excited about what we can do going forward. And I'm excited that we got to do it live on Facebook and on YouTube. And this is the first author interview that I've live streamed, but it will not be the last. Each of my clients, we go through this, we do a case study to kind of overview, just like she shared her learnings from the journey. We go through a query of what you've learned through working with me. And that informs me to do better, to learn better, and to serve clients better. So look forward to that video. I'm going to drop that probably tomorrow. There's a video coming out at about 3 p.m. today where I talk about the Profit First Publishing Blueprint. And there's a streamer at the bottom of the screen, and that's my online course. And it covers some of the things that we tackled in the 10X Niche Network program. But in this online course, we're also talking about the economic impacts to self publishing, and that right now the hot button is tariffs. So if you're a self publishing author, that does impact you. You may not know how, but tune into the course. It is 20% off for the first 50 purchasers of the course. After that, it's regular price, which is $167. The course is 6 to 7 modules with bonus modules. There are downloads. Oluchi can attest that you receive a lot of content that allows you to take yourself through the exercises. And that's useful. You get it, but you get to continue using it along your publishing journey. So sign up for the Profit First Publishing Blueprint. I'm Selena Teams on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and on Facebook. I have a branded Facebook page, Successful You. You can reach me there. My email is hello@selenateams.com. And I thank you so much for your patience and your attention, which is a very precious commodity. Oluchi, thank you for
Thank you.
joining
Yeah.
me, for running this experiment with me of doing a live stream. And I'm just very pleased with what we've accomplished today. So
Me too.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to sign off from live. Oluchi, I'd like you to hang around in the studio until the video does its work. Okay, thank you all for watching.
Thank you. Bye.